Okay, so again, welcome to everybody. We're happy to have you here with us tonight. My name is Chris Burrett, and I am a senior admissions counselor here at Eastman. I work with all the keyboard applicants to the school. I am joined tonight by Professor Doug Humpherys, who got his DMA degree here at Eastman. He's a much sought after soloist, pedagogue, adjudicator. He is currently the artistic director of the Gina Bachauer International Piano Competition and the chair of the Eastman Piano Department. So welcome, Doug.
It's great to be here. I'm looking forward to hearing from all of you today. I hope you'll have lots of questions to ask.
Yes, definitely. So we have prepared some slides to help facilitate our discussion this evening. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we'll get started. Okay, so I do have a few general comments that I want to offer to orient you to the structure of tonight's discussion. The first one being that our presentation this evening is going to be focusing on the undergraduate piano performance major at Eastman. We'll be discussing curriculum, performance opportunities, so basically what Eastman students spend their time doing here at Eastman. We'll give you a little information about the main performance spaces, and then we'll conclude the discussion talking about the admissions process and auditions. There may be some prospective students that are watching our presentation this evening that are interested in majors other than performance, so perhaps composition, theory, or music education, but who have a primary instrument of piano. And we might also have some graduate students, prospective graduate students here tonight as well. And so a lot of this information will be very applicable to you. We are certainly happy that you're here. We will be monitoring questions through the chat feature. So any questions that you have, we definitely encourage you to put them in the chat, and I will be monitoring that and asking Professor Humpherys any questions that we have time for. If we don't get to your question immediately, we will try to circle back and eventually get to it to the best of our ability. Lastly, I do want to mention that we are recording the webinar this evening. So if you have to step away from your screen for a few minutes, or if you would like to share the presentation later with a friend or family member, you will be able to do that. We will send you an email later with a link, and you'll be able to go back and review. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. So for those of you who are with us who aren't familiar, Eastman is located in Rochester, New York. And Rochester, New York is actually located much closer to Toronto than it is to New York City. So we're about 5.5 hours away from New York City, but about 3.5 hours away from Toronto. Eastman is a professional school within the University of Rochester, and the Eastman campus is located in the downtown East End Cultural Arts District of Rochester. The Eastman campus is about 10 or 15 minutes away by shuttle bus from the University of Rochester Liberal Arts and Sciences campus, which we call the River Campus because it is kind of surrounded by the Genesee River here. Tonight, we're going to be taking kind of an immediate deep dive into the undergraduate piano performance curriculum. There is 120 credit total credits that are within that degree. They are spread across private lessons and studio class, ensembles and accompanying, piano literature, pedagogy, and sight reading. All of those kind of performance-centered coursework is indicated here on the pie chart. That is about 63% of your degree. So you're going to spend a lot of time working in the performance area. The remainder of the pie chart is split between humanities and sciences coursework and music academics, which would incorporate music history and theory curriculum. So we're going to take the next slides to kind of walk through each of these bullet point areas, and Professor Humpherys is going to help us by discussing, beginning with the faculty and private lessons and studio class.
So the slide that you're looking at the moment is a picture of all of the faculty who teach performance majors at the school. And so let me introduce them briefly to you. From left to right, there's Alan Chow, who's a professor of piano. He has been here for several years, about 4 years now. He came from the University of Northwestern previously. Marina Lamazov, who did part of her education at Eastman, and he was teaching at South Carolina, and was also a recipient of major prizes, as was Professor Chow in competitions. And she's back at Eastman now as a faculty member for the last 2 years. Next to Marina is Joseph Rackers, who is been on our faculty now for 1 year. He's a new hire. He also was on the faculty at South Carolina. And he also was an Eastman alum. In the center there is yours truly. This is my 27th year at Eastman. I've been very fortunate to be the department chair for a while now. And so I get to be the one who kind of speaks about the department and has the good fortune of introducing people. Next to the right is Alexander Coburn. Many of you might know his name as one of the gold medalists from the Clyburn competition in 2005. He's also been here about 4 years now. And then Natalia Antonova is on the far right. And Professor Antonova and I came to Eastman 1 year apart. So we've had a very long association as faculty members at Eastman. And when we came in, we were the younger part of the faculty, and now 27 years later, we're the older part of the faculty. But as you can see, it's a very dynamic group of people. Everybody up there that has a picture on the top of your screen has a major performance career or has had. All of us are still performers, and we're, until this year with COVID, we are frequent travelers, and we do lots of master classes and festivals around the world and performances, concerts. And so those are the 6 people on the piano faculty who teach performance majors. I want to introduce, while we're here, there are 2 additional members of the piano faculty. One is Tony Karamia, who is the pedagogy teacher and also has a specialty in jazz and ragtime playing. So he's also performing a lot, but he's a little bit more on the jazz side of life. And it's nice to have that in the piano department, because there's a whole separate jazz department at Eastman as well. And then also Andrew Harley, who's head of the accompanying and chamber music program, which also resides in the piano department. So 8 full-time faculty in general, and there we are. Those pictures that you see are class pictures that were taken for the annual yearbook, and one of them is in Simonelli Lounge. That's a place in the Student Living Center, and a lot of the master classes and weekly studio classes are held there. That one on the left happens to be taken from my class, and we were over there having a studio class, and they came in to take a picture, so we all got around the piano and took the picture. The other is a picture of the class of Professor Alan Chow, and that stairwell that you see as you walk into Eastman from the main entrance, you go across a very large space, a large hall, and then up that stairwell to other floors and across a bridge to the annex. It's another building where the practice rooms are, and so that's Professor Chow and his current class of students. So that's the faculty. And a little bit later on, we can talk a little bit about teacher preference and how you get assigned to which studios and all of that when we talk about admission. So I think we can.
Great, thanks, Doug. We do have a question in the chat asking roughly how many students are in each studio?
It varies, but the most studios have 16 to 18. That's the teaching load that everyone has. That's prescribed by the school. Some of us choose to teach overload sometimes, and so sometimes the classes will get as high as 20, 22, something like that, but always at least 16, and that's pretty universal across the board, 16 or 18. So chamber music is a vital part of your education at Eastman, and you can see already, we'll have some slides for you in a few minutes to show you some of the halls, but you can see one of the halls right now, up in the upper right corner is from Hatch Hall, and that's the smallest of the halls. It seats about 250 people. It's a great place for chamber music. So if you love to play chamber music, Eastman is the place for you. You will have the opportunity to play more chamber music than you could ever possibly have time for, because there's so much chamber music going on all the time at Eastman. I should make a difference between the curricular requirements for chamber music and then just the open possibilities for chamber music. So basically, you take some sort of an ensemble class every year, and part of that is an accompanying requirement. We can talk about that in more detail in a minute. So you'll be playing for a singer and for one instrumentalist every year. That means you go to their lesson, you have a rehearsal with them each week, and you get credit for doing that. And you're required to take chamber music as a class. And right now, the definition of chamber music is 3 or more people playing together. And you're required to take that as a senior, but lots of students take it early and take several years of chamber music. It's not unusual for students to form a trio in their sophomore year and keep that trio together for 3 years. And so there's just lots of opportunities. Some of it is required by the curriculum, but a lot of people take more chamber music than actually there is in the curriculum. The way that it works is that you either put together your own chamber group, or you're assigned to a chamber group when you sign up for the class, and you have a coach that gives you weekly lessons for the group, for the chamber music group. And the coaches could be pianists, or they might be other musicians and faculty members through the school. So sometimes, maybe if you're in a piano trio, sometimes maybe your coach might be a pianist, and we have a whole staff of wonderful pianists and coaches that coach chamber music. Usually the people whose pictures you've seen already don't do a lot of chamber music coaching, just because we all have very full loads teaching solo piano, but on occasion we do a little bit of chamber music coaching as well. But it could be that your coach might also be a violin professor, and of course that's a great thing when that happens, because you learn so much from having lessons and coachings from people who aren't pianists, as well as from working on chamber music with pianists. So you'll be able to work both that way. Chamber music also includes piano duos, so that happens quite often. Eastman To Go is this fantastic program that we have here, where all of the chamber music groups have the opportunity to go out into the city of Rochester and perform. A lot of times it's at high schools, or it's in sometimes even younger schools. There are opportunities at churches. There's a whole panoply of places that chamber music groups go and perform and have a chance to try out their piece and maybe reach out into the community. Maybe you go out and talk a little bit about chamber music in a high school. And so there's a lot of performance that's in the city, but there's also, of course, performances every semester within the chamber music class itself. There is a certificate option, and what that means is that that's something that happens quite often at Eastman. You finish a degree in one thing, but you have a certificate in something else. It's not quite like a minor. It's a little bit different, but than a minor, but it just means that you have a little bit of a specialization. So it's not unusual for students to finish all 4 years of their degree with a bachelor's degree in piano performance and a certificate in chamber music. If you're not anxious to do a lot of chamber music, don't let this scare you, because there's an absolute requirement for how much you do. And so if you choose that you're not anxious to do a lot of that, you want to really focus and do mostly solo work, then it's just a reasonable requirement that you would do for chamber music each year. And of course, it's great. One of the great things about playing chamber music at Eastman is that you have such good partners to work with. So you have Eastman violinists and Eastman bassoon players and Eastman clarinetists, and you put together these groups of Eastman students, and so the quality and the level of music is really high with chamber music. So I think we can head into the next.
Okay, Doug, we did just have one question that came in asking how many of these chamber music options apply to the DMA in performance.
All of those, everything that I just said applies to the DMA, but the thing that's different about the DMA is that you can take as much chamber music as you want. You get 1 credit for it per semester, and as a graduate student, you're paying tuition by the credit. So it's good that it's less credit actually, because that way you can take more of it for less money. Also, the DMA requires 4 recitals, and one of them has to be a collaborative recital. So in terms of the degree in the DMA, you have to take some chamber music and have some coachings and prepare a recital as one of your 4 recitals. But you can also take chamber music as an elective in the DMA, and the coachings work the same way, and there's still opportunities with Eastman to go. And I think there's also a graduate certificate in chamber. No, in graduate school, it's not a certificate in chamber music, but you can get a minor in chamber music in the DMA. So it's quite similar. So the options are at least as many, plus there is a required recital. In terms of other performance opportunities, just looking at the pictures you're looking at right now, this top picture is in Kilburn Hall, which is really one of the most gorgeous halls in the United States. It still is one of my very favorite places to play in the world. We'll talk about that in a minute. People signing up for OSIA, this is an orchestra that is run completely by the students and conducted by the students. It has both graduate students in it and some undergraduates in it. And you might recognize that you're in the hallway right now looking at the stairs where you saw the picture of Professor Chow's studio not too long ago. So there are lots of other performance opportunities besides the required recitals, and we'll talk about required recitals when we get to the degrees. We bring in lots of guest master classes. It's not unusual in the piano department. We'll probably have 4 or 5 guest master classes every year. So there are opportunities, if you're recommended by your teacher, to play in those. And we invite our colleagues from other schools. We also frequently invite artists who come into Rochester to play with the Rochester Philharmonic. So in past years, we've had Emmanuel Axe, and a long time ago, we had Mary Pariah here giving a class, and major artists who are coming through, Olga Kern and Yuja Wang, and many of these people who come through to play with the orchestra give master classes. So lots of names, and also lots of teacher names. So our friends, from other schools like Bob McDonald and Logan Skelton and Arthur Green and people that were our colleagues of ours in the piano world, but not at Eastman, are frequently here. Boris Slutsky was here for a series of master classes a couple of years ago. So lots of opportunities to listen and attend master classes. Concerto competitions, we have 3 concerto competitions every year. And the way we do concerto competitions in the piano department is that we pick the 3 concertos ahead of time. So everybody competes with the same concerto. And the good news about that is that it means that people can actually get to play Mozart and Schumann concertos, and that Rock 3 doesn't win every single competition that we run. And so usually there's one classical concerto and maybe something 19th or 20th century. We have lots of Russian concertos, lots of Rachmaninoff and Prokofiev and Tchaikovsky. So we just have a cycle. Every year we pick three concertos. And in order for as many students to have that opportunity as possible, you can only win it once, but you can enter it as many times as you would like while you're here. In terms of new music, there's a wonderful chamber and small orchestra group called Musica Nova that specializes in just performances of recently written and new music. And that you have to audition to get into that group, but frequently they're in need of pianists to perform new things with them. So a lot of students have great time playing with Musica Nova. And I know students who've walked out of Eastman with a whole handful of premieres of new works that they've played and performed right there in Kilburn Hall with Musica Nova. So there's a real specialization there for you in terms of new music. We also, I mean, this shouldn't be a requirement, this is a privilege, but there's a requirement that on all of the senior recitals, you have to play one work that's written in the last 40 years. So there's a curricular requirement to do that. You can also do that on your junior jury if you prefer also. So non-degree recitals, you know, the halls here, we have lots of halls and they're very busy. Sometimes they're scheduled from 11 in the morning till 11 at night. And particularly in spring term when everyone is playing degree recitals, you have days at Eastman where there might be 10 or 11 student degree recitals in one day. But the halls do have openings and vacancies at times in them. And so if you decide that you want to just play a recital that's not a required recital, but you just prepare a program and your teacher signs off on it, you can play non-degree recitals, particularly in some of the smaller spaces like Howard Hanson Hall or in Simonelli Lounge, which you saw a picture of. And so there's that opportunity. Also, there are opportunities around the neighborhood of Eastman. So there's a recital hall in the art gallery that is about 8-9 blocks away from Eastman that can be scheduled. And there are a lot of churches around the neighborhood where sometimes people schedule recitals. So there are places in addition to Eastman to schedule, you know, just your own performances that aren't required. Also, you have master classes we talked about, but you have weekly studio classes. So my weekly studio class is 4 hours, and it isn't this year, but most years it's 4 hours. And the first 2 hours is sort of a master class format, and then the second 2 hours is a recital format. And so I ask my students to come to 2 hours of the class each Friday. So they come to one of the other parts. And so there's lots of opportunities to play your pieces in front of your colleagues in studio class. And all of the faculty holds weekly studio classes. They're arranged in different ways sometimes, but there are always lots of studio classes to perform in as well. So. And this is just looking outside of Eastman. So in the upper left picture, you can see there's where the arrow is right now, that's the main building at Eastman. So you're looking at Main Street right now in downtown Rochester. And then the building right across the street from it is Sibley Library. Sibley Library is the biggest music library on any college campus in the country. It's the third biggest music library in the United States. The only bigger music libraries are the Library of Congress and New York Public Library. And it's just a fantastic resource for studying here, for finding new music, I mean, it literally has everything. I mean, it's very rare that you ever are looking for a piece of music or a book about music that isn't in Sibley Library. So that is the building that contains Sibley Library. You can see someone is in the stacks. They're looking for something in the lower left-hand picture. And what's interesting, just the music library is 5 floors, and it's all music. And so that just gives you a little bit of a idea about this scope. So the lower right-hand picture is Gibbs Street, and that's the street where you enter Eastman on the right, and you enter the bookstore where that blue sign is, and then you enter the door, and that's the same building that Sibley Library is in. So this obviously is taken in late March or early April, because that's when we have tulips right there instead of snow. Right now it's pretty nice. We have lots of autumn leaves there. So I think we can move forward from there. So Chris, would you like to take over on this?
Sure, absolutely. So we just round out the curriculum credits. All undergraduate performance majors will be required to complete 5 semesters of music theory. You will take a theory placement exam when you come to first year orientation. We have 3 levels of first year theory. Remedial theory would be for those who haven't had a lot of access to theory, or it's not a strong suit for them. We have the regular track theory, and we also have an honors track for theory for students who not only are excelling in theory, but have a strong desire to move quickly, and that those honors theory courses move very quickly, and it's quite a special opportunity for students who really love music theory. You'll complete 3 semesters of music history as well. And then the other wedge of the pie here would be the humanities and sciences courses. So all Eastman students are required to take 1 humanities or sciences course every semester that they're enrolled. A couple of things to know about that. The first would be that Eastman has its own humanities department on the downtown Gibbs Street campus. So you can literally cop a squat on Gibbs Street and get your whole degree and never leave if that's what you would like to do. However, any Eastman student can also take any course at the University of Rochester Liberal Arts and Sciences campus that they meet the prerequisite for, up to and including a minor in a secondary area. So you'll find students doing both of those things. So if you're taking any of the general languages, French, Italian, German, political science, film studies, those courses will be offered at Eastman. If you are into taking some hard sciences or math, sign language, astrology, things like that, you would go over to the University of Rochester River campus. I would also like to mention that we do offer a full dual degree with the University of Rochester. What that would mean is that you are pursuing the Bachelor of Music degree on the Eastman campus, as well as a Bachelor of Arts or Bachelor of Sciences degree as well. If you are interested in enrolling as a dual degree student, you do need to apply to the University of Rochester as well as to Eastman. We do have a separate application, so just so that you know that. But for all Eastman students, you can take any course at the University of Rochester up to a minor.
One of the unusual things about the humanities credits at Eastman is the definition of a humanities class is basically a course that's not music, and so you can't take a music course as humanities. It has to be a non-music class. But you can take math, as Chris was just saying. Math counts as humanities credits, or biology counts as humanities credits, and the humanities faculty that's on campus specializes in the humanities that tend to be a little bit more associated with the arts. So there's lots of things like art history and literature courses, and of course languages, lots and lots of language study, because of course the singers have to study a lot of languages right here on campus. And we even have, I think, professor of political science and some psychology professors on as part of the Eastman Humanities. So you can get that, and they're great teachers. And one of the great things about the humanities faculty at Eastman is that they love music too, and they love being at Eastman. And so a lot of times you can interface, you can make assignments from your humanities class, go with maybe some of the pieces that you're playing for your lesson, or something that you're studying in your music history class. You can tie something else in from your humanities class. So it's really helpful to get a broad association that is also attached to the things that you're doing every day with your music.
We do have a question, Doug. I don't know if you want to take this. It's asking if in the honors theory courses, if you complete those courses earlier, or do you just learn more theory?
You know, I don't absolutely know the answer to that. I think you definitely complete the required. I mean, what you would normally learn in 5 semesters. You definitely complete that faster. And I can't remember how many semesters that is. Is that 3 or 4 semesters you do that in? But I know that if you have the opportunity, if you finish the theory, the honors theory, then if you want more theory, you can take graduate theory and apply it to the undergraduate.
Up to PhD level theory, yeah.
Yeah. So if you're really a whiz kid at theory and you want to go as far as you can continue past what a normal undergraduate theory curriculum would be.
And we did have one question that's going back to the last slide, where we mentioned there was early music, and they're saying that they were curious to hear how pianists can be involved in that.
The most likely way that pianists would be involved in that is if they were taking a secondary instrument. So, you can, throughout the school, you can take a second instrument as a secondary study. So, for example, a lot of violinists take secondary piano because they'd like to have some piano lessons along with their violin lessons. So as a pianist, you could do assuming there's room in the studios and that sort of thing, you could study secondary harpsichord, or you could study secondary organ. And so that would be kind of the starting point of that. And then there are a lot of performance practice courses. And Eastman has a system where this isn't true of everything, but there are some graduate courses that undergraduates can take and get undergraduate credit for it. And so some of the performance classes, performance practice courses in early music, and there's a professor here by the name of Paul Odette who has won. It seems like he wins a Grammy every year, and he's a lute player, and there's a whole early music ensemble. So a lot of that is a focus point for grad students, but the undergrads can also do that. We also have a forte piano here, and you can sign up to have some practice sessions on the forte piano if you want. So if you're studying a Mozart sonata for your piano lesson, and you'd like to go spend some time seeing what it really would be like to play the piano that, the kind of piano that Mozart was really writing the music for, you can sign up for some practice time or a chance to play the forte piano. So those are kind of the best opportunities for pianists, undergraduate pianists in early music.
Great, thanks, Doug. So I think we'll move on and talk a little bit about the main performing spaces.
So one of the best things about Eastman is that we have spectacular concert halls in this school. So as you look at the top 2 pictures, that's Hatch Hall, and Hatch Hall was added in 2010. So you can see it's about it seats about 230. So it's the smallest of our 3 major performance halls here. And it's a great hall for chamber music. It's a great hall for violin and guitar solo, like duos with violin and piano, or for guitar music. It's a very, very live hall. And you can see up in the upper part of the hall, all of those places, those are baffles that help adjust the acoustic. So they can adjust the acoustic up or down a little bit. So it's a little bit more live or a little bit less live. And so that's the newest hall. And also the picture on the lower left, that's also Hatch Hall. That's a look at Hatch Hall. Well, they're all Hatch Hall, actually. All four of them are Hatch Hall. So that's a look of what it feels like when you're on the stage. It has it's a two-story space, but not very wide. And so that's a really good combination for a good acoustic. So if you're standing on the stage, there's kind of this big wall behind you, but you can just see the wood in this hall. It makes that for a really live sound. And then, of course, the other picture is someone sitting at the piano talking with someone, or maybe that was a master class, I think, even. So anyway, that's Hatch Hall. And then this is Kilburn Hall. And this is everyone's favorite hall in the world. Kilburn Hall was built in 1920-21 when the building was first constructed, and it seats about 450. I'd say probably 70% of the piano degree recitals take place in this hall, and it literally just has one of the most beautiful acoustics I've ever played in. You can see this work on the ceiling. I mean, it just has all of the ambiance of a little bit of an old-fashioned hall, and this beautiful stage with wood paneling and the lamps on the stage. And it's likely that your audition will be in this hall. Not this year, but usually we have auditions in Kilburn Hall, and sometimes a little bit in Hatch Hall as well. And it's just a great space. And so you can see a close-up on the top right. You can see a close-up of what the stage feels like a little bit more, with the wood paneling all around on the inside of the shell. And it's nearly 100 years old. It's the chairs and the carpet and that sort of thing get refurbished on occasion, but the wood and the ceiling is original. So that's just one of the best things about Eastman, and you'll hear dozens and dozens and dozens of concerts in Kilburn Hall when you're here. And then we should look at Kodak Hall. So Kodak Hall is the biggest hall at Eastman, and it has sort of an interesting history, because George Eastman founded this hall actually as a movie theater. And it was also built about 100 years ago. It's original to the building. And it was back in the days of silent movies. And so there were lots of people who would be on the stage that would be improvising on an organ to provide the score, the musical score for a silent movie. And over the years, as things changed, the hall has been converted as a big orchestral space. So all of the Eastman orchestras play here. If you get to play a piano concerto, you play in this hall. It seats a little under 3,000. But you can see that it keeps all of the same designs from the original building, even though it's been refurbished a little bit. So there's a very famous chandelier in the middle, and if you look in the lower right, you can see that there's 3 levels of seating, and the very best acoustic, lower left also shows that, and the very best acoustic is the balcony. And you see there's seating along the sides, there's boxes along the side. So it's also just a wonderful old world concert hall that's part of Eastman. And so the Rochester Philharmonic performs here. So there are lots of great artists that come through to play with the orchestra that are right here in the building. And they are discount tickets for students for those concerts. And then the orchestra concerts, sometimes some of the jazz concerts are in here. They're popular music concerts that get scheduled here sometimes. Some, big names from Hollywood will come and play and do concerts here sometimes. So those are the 3 main halls. And then what you're not seeing, there are a couple of other smaller spaces also in the school that are performance spaces for smaller events.
Doug, we do have a question in the chat asking what kinds of pianos do these halls have?
They all have Steinways. There are two 9-foot Steinways in each of those 3 halls. And Eastman isn't a Steinway school completely, but the vast majority of pianos in our school are Steinways. And so the practice rooms have a little bit of everything, but even the practice rooms have more Steinways than other things. And I think there's at least, I guess there's 2 in all 3 of those halls, 2 9-foot Steinways. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Doug. I think we're going to change gears here a little bit and start working through the application process. And so it is probably apparent to everyone that we're having a very unusual year this year. These images would have been from what we would normally be doing, which typically we would have a pre-screening process for piano performance majors that would culminate if you were invited for an audition in the month of February, live auditions. However, this year, due to the COVID pandemic, we are not having any live auditions on campus. So all auditions are by recording. So our application is available on the Eastman website only. Our application deadline is December 1st. Audition recordings are due by January 8th for piano performance majors, both undergraduate and graduate. If any prospective students are on the call for the composition, music theory, or music education majors, your audition recording deadline would be December 15th. All that information is available on the Eastman website under audition repertoire requirements. So Professor Humpherys, would you like to talk a little bit about what are you looking for in an applicant? What is the Eastman piano faculty looking for?
You know, it's so interesting, Chris, because I get asked that. That's probably the question I get asked most often from whenever I'm judging something. You know, I'm judging an international piano competition and someone comes and says, what are you really looking for? And we're looking for everything, actually. But the short answer is that we're looking for a really great pianist. And what that means is that there's someone who certainly, I mean, it goes without saying that you have a very strong advanced technique. You know, most pianists start pretty young, and so it's important that a technique is in place as soon as possible. And so it's just assumed if you're playing an audition that you have a really fine technique. We're looking for someone who has an understanding of style. You know, I can talk about the 5 pieces in a minute, but someone who's very serious about looking at the score and observing every single mark that the composer made, and understanding that, you know, if you are playing Beethoven, that he wrote this out with a pen and ink, longhand, when he composed it, with every possible detail, and the understanding that every staccato and every accent and every sforzando is what makes the character of the music. And so an understanding of the style and of the music, and real dedication and conscientiousness about observing the intentions of the composer. And then it's really important that we're always looking for someone that has a musical personality of their own. And that means that they can take a piece that maybe it's a new work, or maybe it's something that's 250 years old, but they can play it. They can play it with all of the composer's intentions and still have a little bit of an individual stamp, or they have an ability to convey the music in a way that shows that there's a real strong feeling, expressive musician there, and someone who also has a musical intellect and understanding of the music that they're playing. And you know, the bottom line is that there's this whole expressive thing that just we've heard so many auditions through the years. And when we're not auditioning for Eastman, we're judging in other places. We know every note of this music, and we want to hear someone that can really reach us and make us respond to this music that we love so much. We spent our whole lifetime doing it, and someone at 18 years old can walk in and show us something that is either fresh or that's new or personal or intriguing or expressive about the music. So we're looking for all of those things. In terms of the repertoire for an undergraduate audition, you need to have 5 pieces. And so they're outlined here. You need to play a complete work of Bach that contains a fugue, complete classical sonata, a complete romantic work written in the 19th century, a work written in the 20th or 21st century, and 1 virtuoso etude. And there you'll notice there's a list of composers that you can choose the etudes from, and it has to be a fast etude. So, you know, one of my favorite Chopin etudes is Opus 25 number 7, and it's slow and it's in C sharp minor and it's called the cello etude. But the reason we require etudes is because they tell us something important about your technique. And so much as I love that, you can't use that for your audition. But you can certainly play it in the studio when you're studying. So anyway, those are the 5 things that you have to have prepared. This year, you know, if you're a performance major, you can have until February 8th, or I'm sorry, till January 8th to submit the recording. The online application is still due on December 1st. But you have a little extra time to get the recording ready. And one, you'll see underneath the complete works policy. I'm not going to take the time to describe that now. You can read through it on your own. And if you have a question on it, ask me about it. It's a little bit complicated because we don't want people coming in with one movement of a sonata, but what do you do if you're playing Rachmaninoff preludes? You're not expected to play the whole opus. And so there's some kind of rules to help guide with that. And that's what the complete works policy is. But basically it's 5 pieces that you have to have prepared.
We do have a couple questions, Doug. Someone's asking how many piano performance undergraduates we usually accept per year on average?
I think the average probably averages usually we have about 15 or 16 new freshmen, and so probably, is that about right, Chris? You have those numbers?
Yeah, I mean every given year, but yeah.
It's a little different every year. It kind of depends on how many vacancies there are in various studios and that sort of thing. But probably a good average would be 15 or 16 new first-year students as undergrads.
And they're asking,
of course. Oh, I was just going to say, of course, not everybody who is accepted comes. So we accept a larger number than 16 are offered admission, and then you know, and then there's a waiting list for people just as the whole process unfolds. So some people get on the waiting list and don't get an offer. Some people get on the waiting list and then do get an offer. But class is about 16. Yeah.
And so the next question is kind of a 2-part. It's for a applicant possibly auditioning in person in 2022. So they're wondering if during live auditions, are applicants permitted to play through their pieces in their entirety?
No. And just in case that makes you feel bad, there's not a university in the world that does that. Or music school. Your audition's 15 minutes. And so, you know, typically in an average year, we have about 300 applicants for piano performance, and we do pre-screening, and so we tend to hear about 180 people live most years. That includes undergraduates and graduate students. So we really can't listen for 180 hours. So the audition is 15 minutes. You can start with the work that you want to. and then we'll jump around a little bit in the program. It's likely that we're going to hear the etude. It's pretty likely that we'll hear the classical sonata. And but you know, if you start with something that's really virtuosic, we might ask for the slow movement of the sonata, or you know, it's possible that we might want to hear the fugue so that we hear how you deal with counterpoint, you know, in Bach. So you'll probably play 4 of the 5 things, and you'll probably play about 3 to 4 minutes of each one.
Okay, we have a question. Will there be an interview for DMA applicants? I think I can answer that and say yes. We will be conducting DMA applicant interviews over Zoom. You'll be contacted about that probably in the late January or in February. And Doug, did you want to maybe talk a little bit about teacher preferences and how we handle studio assignments?
Sure. So, you know, a lot of, there are kind of 2 ways that students come to Eastman. A lot of you may have already been in contact or have met some of our faculty because you've been at a summer festival, or they've come through your town or school and given master classes or whatever, or you might not know any of us and not really have an impression about us. So what happens is that on the initial online application, there's a place for you to list 3 preferences of the teacher that you would like to study with. And of course, before any, one of the things about Eastman, and most schools are like this, I think, but you get admitted to the school as opposed to being admitted into a studio. And so the first step is that you get admitted into the Eastman School of Music. And then once that has happened, then the whole process of creating the studios goes into place. And it's complicated. It's like a big, giant jigsaw puzzle to start with. And you're looking at the person who does this and deals with it every semester because Chris has all kinds of charts and everything so that she knows exactly who wants to go where and how much room there is in various studios. So basically, you know, if teacher A has 5 openings and there are 9 students who are admitted to that studio that want to study with teacher A, then that teacher will choose the 5 that the teacher wants, and then 4 of them will go on the wait list for that studio. And depending on how many of the 5 come to Eastman, then they might get off the wait list, or they might have to take their second choice. And in the meantime, maybe teacher B has 3 openings, and teacher B would love to teach the person who is the second choice. But that person usually won't go into that studio until it's clear that there's not room in the first studio. And so you can see how complicated it can be. But Chris just does magic and is amazing every year. And I think we can say that everybody knows who their teacher assignment is going to be before they have to commit to coming to school. And so anyway, you can always be in contact with the faculty to ask to meet them. You know, some of the faculty are doing some Zoom lessons now. Usually in the past, you would just come for a campus visit and have a lesson. And people have various amounts of room in their schedule for doing online lessons, but it's fine to just, my best advice is if you want to study with someone, it's good to just send them an email and just let them know that you're interested in studying with them, and then some will be able to maybe set up something with you. It's not guaranteed that everyone can do that, but we try to accommodate that as much as we can.
Great, thank you, Doug.
Yeah.
So, just want to kind of round out the discussion on the admissions process. So thank you, Doug, for all the information about the audition recording. You guys feel free to continue to send questions in the chat as we end up here, and we'll try to make sure we get to everybody's questions. After the audition recording, we're going to require some things for the online application, which this year for piano performance majors will include a transcript. You can scan an unofficial transcript at this point and attach it right to your application. That's perfectly fine. You'll need to write a personal statement or essay for us. Unfortunately, you can't use your Common App one because we have special question prompts, but this is the place in your application where you can help us get to know you a little better. It should definitely include information that is different than what we can know by reading the rest of your file. So feel free to be authentic and help us get to know you a little better. You'll also submit a resume with your application. We do have instructions in the application and on the website that kind of help you know what you want to include and how you might want to organize it. I will mention here that in the resume section of your application, if you had festivals or competitions that you were meant to be a part of, but that were canceled due to the pandemic, we definitely still want to know about those. So feel free to include those. If those events went online, you can tell us that as well. We definitely want you to include those things. Recommendations for Eastman, we require 3. First and most important recommendation would be from the primary teacher of the instrument you're applying on, so your piano teacher. The second recommendation should be from somebody musically affiliated with you. So if you've worked with somebody in a chamber music setting or at a festival, or someone who can really speak to how you work in a musical setting with other musicians. The third recommendation from Eastman should be an academic teacher recommendation. We do want to know how you work in an academic setting. So think of your favorite academic course and what teacher would love to kind of go on and on about how wonderful you are. And that's the person you should pick. And lastly, I'll just quickly mention for any applicants who are not native English speakers, if you've not been in a English speaking institutional educational environment since you were 14, our English proficiency requirement this year is the Duolingo English test. This is required for everyone. If you have also taken an IBT TOEFL or an IELTS test, you can submit those scores in addition to the Duolingo test, but the Duolingo English test is the requirement for this year. So, and I just left this little timeline here. This is kind of little outdated information over here, but it kind of does just give you the indication that we're still pretty early on in this admissions process. So I do want to encourage everyone to definitely be in touch. Feel free to reach out to us. We are all working remotely at this point. So the best way to reach us would be by email, admissions@esm.rochester.edu. We're definitely trying to get back to people very quickly. So if you have any questions about the program, about the application, any way at all that we can help you, we're more than happy to do what we can. You can also get the Eastman faculty contact information on our website. All their email addresses are listed there. So if you want to reach out to them about a prospective student lesson or to ask them questions about their studio, that's also very much open for you. We do have a question asking, for a Master of Music, do we need to submit the application to the School of Music? Yes, that is true. You do not need to apply to the University of Rochester. If you're applying for a graduate degree at Eastman, you only need to complete the Eastman application.
And the master degree repertoire is slightly different. It's quite similar, but it's not quite as specific. So you still have to play the etude, and then you have to play at least 3 style periods, and of your choice, with 3 different style periods. And the program has to be a minimum of 45 minutes. And the DMA is the same, only the program has to be a minimum of 60 minutes.
And Doug, we have a kind of a big final question here asking about what type of careers or jobs do Eastman piano performance majors get? And they put in parentheses, right after graduation. And do you help people get those opportunities?
Yeah, well, it's the answer to that is there are lots of different kinds of jobs, and traditionally everybody assumes that if you're in a DMA program that you're going to be teaching college courses, and the majority of our students do that. We have a very high percentage of our DMA grads that get college teaching jobs within the first year or two after they graduate. And we've had some students that actually get jobs before they finish their DMA. It's not unusual for students to land a job someplace and still have a year to go on their DMA, in which case they don't have to be in residence and can sort of gradually finish it up in a summer or an extra semester, or commuting a little bit. So the job market right this minute, because of the pandemic, is very difficult, and it's going to take a little bit of time for it to come back, but I'm quite confident that it will come back. I just wrote 2 letters of recommendation this afternoon to people who are applying for college teaching positions that are happening, and so you're going to need to be a little bit patient for the job market to come back, but I think it will once we get through this pandemic. Some students end up doing other things, and it just depends. The Eastman degree has a certain cachet to it that I think is very helpful. It has always been that way in terms of getting teaching jobs. But some people have other things in their life that help determine that. Maybe they want to live close to their home. Maybe they have a spouse that they're going to be living together and need to find a job within a certain geographical area. So it's always a good idea for DMA students to have a lot of varied kinds of skill, because that college teaching job might not be just waiting for you when you leave the school. And so it's good if you have some teaching skills, or maybe you can open a studio for a while, or maybe you can be in a city where you have lots of chamber music opportunities, and kind of start a career that way. Maybe on occasion we have students who go out and win some competitions and start doing quite a bit of playing, which kind of helps connect in other ways. So there's lots more than one path, and we have a lot of DMA graduates, and not everybody has their dream job. Life just doesn't work that way. So we need to be honest and authentic about that. But the majority of students who walk out of Eastman with a DMA end up with a way of having a really good life in music and making some money while they're doing it. And it takes a little bit of extra creativity these days.
And Doug, what do you see as the trajectory for most undergraduates who graduate?
Well, I think that's going to continue. Just in terms of where we are this particular year, it's going to be a little easier on the undergraduates because we'll be further out from the pandemic, and so. But who can predict the future? I mean, that's 8 or 9 years away if you want a teaching job. But a lot of people sort of find their own niche. And so I think it's really important. You have to do 2 things as a pianist. You have to be a really strong, really good pianist to get a job. And that has to be mission number 1, because you're not going to get a job just because you take lots of interesting classes and you've had some leadership and a few things like that. Every college teaching job has an interview that starts out with a concert and a master class, and the competition is very tough. And so number 1 is that you have to be a great pianist, and number 2 is that you have to be a little bit more flexible in some of your abilities than maybe you did 15 years ago. If it's helpful if you're a little bit entrepreneurial about things, if you can kind of create things. I mean, probably after the pandemic, we're going to have a whole new revolution in online jobs and online performances and online schools and online teaching. And I'm hoping not to do very much more Zoom for the rest of my life after this year ends. But already it's been very interesting to see how much is being created in terms of performing virtually. So you have to be willing to go with the flow. But you know, that's always been the case. You know, Bach did not get the first 3 jobs that he applied for. And it's, you know, it's not like medical school where you come out of with a music degree and there's just a job waiting for you. And it shouldn't be, actually, you know, and if music means enough to you to go through and do what you're going to do to become a great pianist, then the risk of the future shouldn't be the most important consideration to you. Because if the thing that you're thinking the most about in terms of getting an education is a job, you're less likely to get one, because the person who's going to get the job is this person who spends their whole education thinking about music.
And I do want to circle back. We have just one more kind of more practical question here. The question is obtaining a practice room difficult?
It's not difficult. It's crowded. But you know what we've done recently is we've set up an online system where you sign up for a practice room. We did that specifically for COVID because right now there's has to be certain waiting times that the practice rooms are empty, and we have to monitor the practice rooms very, very carefully. So right now, students sign up for time in 2-hour blocks of time, and they can sign up for several blocks per day. And so the good thing about doing it that way is that you know that there's a specific amount of time that you have to practice, and you know when it's going to be, and so you can go do it. So it organizes you a little bit. Previously, it's been much more just first come, first serve. And there are good things about that system too. I remember my favorite trick was I would just get a good friend, and we'd start at 8 o'clock in the morning and alternate 2 hours and just occupy a room for the whole day, which was a sneaky way to get all the time that you wanted. So I think there will probably be some combination of those things. The other thing that happens is we have 9 relatively new Steinways, about 15 years old, and there's a studio practice room for each studio where you sign up for a specific time during the week. And so it guarantees, you know, the newest Steinways in the practice room, and you can get at least not a huge amount of time in that room, but you can get a significant time in that room where you're guaranteed of having a strong instrument to practice on, a newer instrument to practice on. And then sometimes we'll see what happens after the pandemic, if we keep it all online sign up, or if we might open up a little bit first come, first serve again.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Doug. Thank you for patiently answering all the questions and for being with us tonight. Really appreciate it.
I wish I could see all of you. I'm used to Zoom. So, but anyway, I hope that we've provided the information. And
absolutely. And I do want to mention before we let everyone go that if you have any questions about your application, the Eastman Admissions Office is actually having open office hours that we're holding every Sunday from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. and every Monday evening from 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. We are having open office hours. You should be receiving emails about that. And we're going to be available to just help with any questions that you might have. So good luck to everybody, and hopefully we will see you on the Eastman campus at some point.
Looking forward to seeing you.
Good night.